Okay. When you were a kid, what were your favorite radio shows?
Oh, now this is when I'm a kid.
Yeah.
Oh, used to always like Lone Ranger for a Western. And, oh golly. When I was a kid, there was Jack Armstrong and stuff. Several of them we used to, after school, get home from school, and then that would be about the time there was several different shows come on. I don't even remember some of them now. Golly. Used to watch that My Friend Irma. That was a comedy show. And Terry and the Pirates.
So when you'd
This
listen...
is all stuff when I'm just, a kid.
Uh-huh.
And now this is on radio too. They didn't even know what TV was at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But you could sit and get just as interested in a radio show as what TV is now. I mean, you'd picture it. In fact, after TV came out and they had some of them shows on TV where you could see them, I was disappointed because you had, like the Lone Ranger and Silver, you had in your mind, you had pictured this great big white horse, and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And, it just wasn't that when you seen on film.
Mm-hmm.
So there was kind of some things you seemed greater to you just on radio than it did to see it on TV. Oh, man. I didn't spend a lot of time on listening to radio like you do watching TV nowadays. There'd be just a few shows and
So did you act them out with your friends then after you listened to it? Did you go and play Lone Ranger for a while?
Oh yeah, we all had our favorite Western heroes, One kid would be this guy and then somebody else. We used to have a lot of fun that way. We did things so much different than the kids nowadays. I mean, we had fun doing stuff that never cost a dime, Well, we didn't have a dime to spend on it if it did cost a dime. Mm-hmm. And we'd make up our own fun. And that's what seems so funny to me nowadays, to look out on the mound out here. You don't see a lot of people up there ever. And when I was a kid, that was just all lined up with people up there, sleds and skis and skiing. And we'd walk way out there and ski all day and slide and then walk the way home. We never needed cars. We just didn't have them to use them much.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted to go someplace, you walked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we used to get quite some rides out there. Broken leg once in a while, broken arm. I was always lucky. I never got anything broke. Had some close calls. And we did a lot of ice skating. And there was a little creek right on the edge of town down here, and we'd go down there under the bridge. We'd walk out there, and then we'd take our shoes off there and put our skates on. And we'd skate out that just a little narrow creek clear out to Rush Lake. And then we'd skate all day out there and then have to skate home yet. Mm-hmm. We spent a lot of time, in the wintertime on skates.
Mm-hmm.
And slides. Sleds, everybody had a sled under their arm on the way to school. It just, everybody carried a sled. It was just part of your life. I can't imagine today taking a run down the road and just flopping down on a sled. About one time it'd do me in. But the town used to block off a street here in town where there was a big hill over there past where Legos live. And that was the sliding hill. And boy, at nights it was just packed with kids and people. And we'd go clear to the tracks, it was long. Quite a good road to slide on. And Then there was a vacant lot up on Main Street. The fire department used to flood that for an ice skating rink, which we haven't had nothing like that, you know, for years and years and years. But back then, why they did things like that for the kids. But nowadays there's so much other stuff taking place of that they forgot how to do it. We just had a different kind of fun. I mean, we lived half our life climbing trees and we'd rig up deals for pole vaulting, you know, and it was nothing like you see on TV, but we, you know, did the best we could do just with some poles. Did a lot of that.
You remember any specific instances about the pole vaulting, any stories or any climbing tree stories?
Well, just straight south of us here, about half a block now. I mean, it's all houses now. That used to be a great big grove. That was where the Methodist church and stuff is. That was all a real big grove. And we used to play out there a lot. And we played tag. And one of the rules in the tag was you always had to be on wood or something, you know, to get from tree to tree. If it was running, well, you had to have some sticks to step on, and we'd climb a tree, and we'd climb. They had a lot of real tall, thin trees there. And if you were being chased, you'd start up on them real tall, thin trees, and it would start to bend a little bit, but it would hold you up there until the guy that was trying to catch you'd get up there, and then that would be just enough weight to bend the tree over for you could grab another tree and let go, and that'd flip him back over again. Just crazy stuff like that. But it was fun. We did some things that was crazy. We used to go up the fire escape on the schoolhouse down here, and we had a way of getting over the edge of the fire escape up on the railing. We could grab a hold of the gutter around the top of the schoolhouse, and we'd get on top of that schoolhouse and play tag up there with these kids. And I wouldn't hardly be able to even climb up there now, but then we'd run on there just like nothing. Then one day one kid stepped on something that was slick or something, and he started sliding, and he slid clear down. Now, lucky was the building had old gutters maybe 10 inches wide or so, and he got, that stopped him. He slid into that, and it stopped him. And that's when we finally got to thinking that, saying, now, this isn't a good thing to do. And so we quit that. But then we started climbing onto the gymnasium, and on the corners, the structure of the buildings had every other brick on the corners for about 2 foot each way from the corner. A brick stuck out about an inch farther than, you know, the next one to make it decorative. And so you could just get a hold of your fingers on them bricks and your toes on them. And we'd climb up them all the way to the top of the gym, just climbing on them bricks like a spider. It's a wonder a lot of some of us didn't get killed. We were pretty lucky.
Do you remember when you first got your television, how old you were?
Oh, let's see. I must have been probably 16 or 17 when I seen the first one, and that was when I was on a trip down to Missouri with an aunt and uncle of mine, and we stopped in a place down there for dinner on our travel that time, and in this cafe they had, that was the first TV I ever seen, and it was real snowy. I mean, you could see a picture at times and then you couldn't, and back in them days, and the first people that did get TVs, and you'd go out there over there to watch TV, it would never fail. You couldn't hardly see it for snow, and they'd always say, oh, you should have been here yesterday. It was coming in just as clear, but every time you'd be there, it was nothing but a snowstorm. And it was hard to imagine that before we ever had TV that this could even be possible. We thought, how can they send a picture, you know, like that? But then gradually here it came, and we got our first TV Lois and I did when we were working for Ray Hormel. And that would have been probably in 1953. We got married in 52, but in 53 it would be the first one we had. Now my folks had got one about the year before, and that's the first one our family ever had. But oh, I tell you, it was a lot different. You had your chores after school. You'd get home at night, and one of the things was go out the shed and start breaking up coal. It came in big lump coal, and you'd have to take a big hammer, you know, and bust it up in small enough so you could put it in the stove, and you'd haul in 3 or 4 pails of coal, and everybody had a cob box at that time, and you'd fill the cob box. That's for starting the fires in the cook stove, and they had a reservoir on one end of them. I don't know how many gallons of water that held, but then we'd haul in clean snow and dump in there, and that would melt, you know, and it'd be warm, soft water you'd have for use for washing up. We didn't have no running water or nothing like that, you know, under the, like, I don't know how like even my mother, how she used to do all that. You just have a little bitty sink is all, and a 5-gallon pail sitting under it, you know, and every so often you have to carry that out and dump it, and just an awful change of life, the way we lived then and the way we live now. Then when we was kids too, we also had what we called the Rush Lake Navy. We found a couple. We used to spend a lot of time out at Rush Lake. We always had to walk. And well, I was in the Boy Scouts too, and in the Boy Scouts we learned a kind of a pace that Boy Scouts made. You'd run so many steps and then walk so many steps, you know, and run, and we would use that method to going out there all the time. And in a couple of different years, we'd found some old boats that some duck hunters had finally just decided it wasn't any good, and they just abandoned them out there. And we fixed them up, and then we call that our Rush Lake Navy. And just boards for paddles, you know. But we'd row all over that lake out there, and we had Boy Scout camps out there that we made shelters and stuff. We had really some nice camps. Had a lot of fun out there. Spent a lot of time out on that lake. And like I say, in the wintertime, we was always out there on skates. Skate right up to the edge of open water, you know. How we ever got by without somebody going in, I don't know. And in real cold weather, we would take a pail of sand along that we'd pour gas in with the sand. And we'd light that bucket on fire out there, and that would burn a long time, you know, a place to warm your feet and your hands, stuff like that. And then for a few years, that was terrific fishing out there. And I can remember going out there, and a lot of times we'd have 3 or 4 hooks on our line, which you really shouldn't have had, I guess. But there was many times you'd have 2 big bullheads on at a time, you know, when you'd pull them in. And there was a long time there that lake hadn't been fished, you know. People didn't think there's anything in there, and somebody went out there and tried it, and here was these great big bullheads.
This was downstairs.
And
This
so
was downstairs.
at nights it was just like there was campfires all around that lake out there. So many people fishing, but then they finally dug a ditch to drain it down. They wanted to keep it more for wildlife, for ducks and stuff like that. So the rushes grew up, and it kind of ruined the fishing, you know.
Sweetie, you better go downstairs, honey. I gotta talk to Grandpa. When you were a kid, did you play any musical instruments? Or did you sing?
Yeah, I used to sing. See, my folks, you know, they played for dances. My mother was a real good piano player. My dad played saxophone. And they had their band, their dance band, and they played different occasions all around the area, you know. I mean, they never went a long ways off to play, but in them days there was a lot of, every town had a little dance hall or a place where they could dance. And I got started going along with them and singing sometimes at the dances. And I can remember, people along the dance floor, they'd come up past the stage there and slip a dime or a quarter in my pocket. A quarter, that was a lot of money if you got a quarter, And then it was time to think about whether you wanted to play an instrument, in the school band or not. And I thought, yeah, I'd like that, but I wanted to play a trumpet. And the band leader at that time, they had plenty of trumpet players, I guess, which I can see now why he wanted, but he was short of woodwind instruments, and he kind of talked my folks into getting me a clarinet, which I didn't like and didn't want, And naturally, you're not going to do right justice to it, when it wasn't what you wanted. And I think they always hated it afterwards too, that they kind of forced that on me, because I played in the school band clarinet, but then I just never liked it. I put it away and never touched it since. Just I couldn't play nothing on one now.
Back when you were singing with your folks, how old were you then?
Oh, I probably was 10, 11 when I first started. And I was probably 14, 15 yet when about the last times that I went out, with them singing on the band.
How often would this be? Would it be every weekend or monthly or?
No, it's just hard to say. I mean, there would be special occasions, and sometimes every couple of weeks, like here in town, my folks run a cream station uptown. They bought cream and eggs and hides, and there was an old building just about a half a block down the street was what they had for the dance hall. And I can remember them, they'd get guys there. My mother had her own piano, and they didn't have one in the dance hall there. So they'd get some guys up there on dance night and get the piano out on the sidewalk and roll it down the sidewalk down to the dance hall, And boy, everybody had a big time. I mean, dances really drew the people at that time. Well, there wasn't a lot of other stuff to do. There was no TVs or nothing. And dances really went over big. Everybody danced. And I had a lot of fun doing it. And I know an aunt and uncle of mine, when they got married, this was Johnny Stahl Jr. And about that time a song had come out, "Oh Johnny," and at their wedding dance, and I sang that for them. I can remember that real plain, and they really got such a kick out of that we picked that song for them that night.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you, what other songs do you remember that you sang and your folks played?
Oh, Little Sirocco, Playmates. Golly, that's something I'd have to give some thought. I mean, there was a lot of them. Well, right now I just can't come up with a lot of them. Sometimes I'll sit down and they're all right there. I can think of pretty much all of them that I used to sing, And occasionally I'll hear a song on the radio or on TV now when they'll play an oldie, and then that brings back all those memories of them days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell you right now, I just draw a blank there trying to think of some of the...
When you were a teenager and you had free time, what did you do?
When I had free time as a teenager?
Yeah.
Well, we did a lot of time. We used to walk out to the Ocheeden Creek. Many days we'd walk out there and swim and fish. And a bunch of kids. Sometimes we'd walk down the railroad tracks out there. Sometimes we'd go around the road. And maybe twice a day, and that'd be a couple miles, 2 or 3 miles out there that we'd walk to where the good swimming holes. And walk way back home and back again yet that same day, you know. We just never stopped. And we'd get thirsty. We knew of some tile lines that we thought was springs at that time, but they was tile lines, good fresh water bubbling out, you know. We'd stop there and drink. This day and age, you wouldn't dare drink out of them places. But we did, and we spent a lot of time at the lake and the mound and the creek. Let's see. Well, they had a theater in town then at that time, and in the fall we was always all going around hunting up raking jobs so we could pick up a little money to go to the show. I think it cost like maybe a quarter, 20 cents or a quarter for to go to a show. And at them days they had anyway here they had a serial that went on every Wednesday night, you know. And even if the show that was coming up wasn't going to be any good, you wanted to get there to see how that serial was going to turn out. It's just like just something to draw people in, you know. It used to be the Princess Theater years ago, and then some new people bought it and they completely remodeled it, and then they had a contest for somebody to name the new theater. They wanted a new name for it. And my dad came up with one, thought of the mound, because the mound had been something that's kind of made the town a little bit. Our basketball teams was the Mounders and everything, you know, was the Mounders because of this mound. And he said, I believe, he said, why don't you put in mound? He told me to go ahead and put it in. And I said, golly, yeah, I'll try it. So that's what I sent in. And here about 8 or 10 other people had the same idea. So then they drew a name for the winner, you know, that got, I don't remember just what you got, so many nights of free shows and this and that. So we still lost out, but we did have the right name picked, so then it was the mound ever after that. But they had, every Wednesday night, we had a big bandstand on wheels, a big platform. They'd pull that up on Main Street, and they had the town city band played, and popcorn stands on the street corners. And it was busy. I mean, just for a little town, and there was hardly a extra space to park a car. A lot of the farmers came in, kind of had their own spot where they always parked. And if they'd get in town a little late some night and somebody else had their spot, they was a little bit teed off about it, you know. They didn't like that. But and the dumb things, we used to do just dumb stuff too. Somebody had found some little fine copper wire, like out of a radio coil deal. And we setting up town this one night, and we'd get one kid would get up on the steps of a store or something, and another kid be setting out on everybody sat on people's car fenders and stuff along the curb. They never thought nothing of it. Nowadays you wouldn't want to do that. And that wire was so fine you couldn't hardly see it, you know. So people walking up down the street, and the streets were busy then all the time, and we'd hold that wire real tight, about the height of men's hats, you know. And they'd come walking by, and there'd go their hat off. You'd, you know, look around, get down, pick their hat up, and start down the street, and every little bit they'd look back, you know, trying to figure out what happened to that hat. There we'd sit, you know, not hardly being able to keep from laughing. And just crazy stuff like that. We used to do a lot of. And before I was really a teenager, everybody had a tire, old tires. We rolled tires around. I mean, and you had your special tire. No matter where you'd go, just something to do, roll a tire. And we'd go all over town rolling them tires. And I mean, they was a special tire to you for a long time. Nobody else wanted to take your tire, you know. And then in them days, oil cans at the gas stations, they were out of a round quart can made out of tin. And we'd get those cans and lay them down on the side, and you'd stomp them with your feet, and then the can would curl up around your soles and your shoes, and then they'd stay hooked on. And we'd run around all day clattering and making all that racket, you know, and people never complained then about what kids done, like it is nowadays. But it was just a different kind of fun. And I don't remember just how I got it, but I got an old horse buggy, a four-wheel buggy, and I tied ropes on the ends of the axles to steer it. We took the shafts off where the horse would normally, hold the front of the buggy. And we'd push us. We'd get a bunch of kids and we'd push that all around town. And it rolled real easy, those little skinny, steel-tired buggies. And we finally got going down the town hill of town here. One day, there must have been 6 or 8 of us, we really gave it a good push going downhill. Now at that time, we still had trains hauling mail and stuff in, and there was a city dray man, and he also hauled the mail, and he had a team in a wagon that every day at about train time he'd head down to the depot to be there to pick up the mail. And he was going down the hill about halfway down when we started with his team and wagon. And we gave that little wagon a good push, and everybody hopped on, and down that hill we went. It was just singing them little wheels. And we passed him, and he just didn't know what to think, and the horses about run away. And we hit the railroad tracks, and the buggy bounced up, and it came down, the wheels locked, and I couldn't steer it. And we headed right for the depot. And we did. We hit the depot, and we hit it so hard that one hub knocked a hole right through the side of the depot. And there was some people in there waiting for the train that was sitting in the seats, and we could see through the windows. They just all took right off. Oh, man. Kids that do that today, why, they'd be in jail for a week.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Getting back to the movie theater, do you remember some of your favorite movies that you saw and who your favorite movie stars were?
Yeah, let's see. Most of them were westerns. There was George O'Brien and, like I say, Hopalong Cassidy, and then if they come, the kids was always there to see them. Once in a while, a musical you like, but we really wasn't into that too much. And they would have cartoons, and then news, from at that time there was wartime and stuff, there'd be war news on. And there just wooden benches. And then one night they had a good show that was going to be on over at Harris, so some of us decided to go to Harris. And we got over there, and the theater there was in the upstairs over a big old implement shop. And it was cold, and they started the show, and they didn't have regular theater seats, it was just chairs. And everybody pulled up chairs and sat around the old coal stove and watched the movie that night. I'll never forget that. Yeah, well, what a difference. We're really spoiled nowadays, I tell you. We got things so easy. And we used to, another thing, we used to walk to Harris on weekends to play pool. They would let you play pool there. Here, minors, they wouldn't let you in the pool hall to play pool. But in Harris, they did. And that's about 7 miles over there. And there would be times, we didn't do this all the time, but maybe 3 or 4 weeks out of each year, we would make a trip walking clear over to Harris to play pool for the day and then walk way back home.
Did you get an allowance when you were a kid?
No.
Never,
no.
not even as a teenager?
No. No, it was just if you happened to have a little money left over and you needed some, you got it. If you didn't, well, you just stayed home. My folks were a lot of our neighbors and stuff never even owned a car. I mean, people just didn't have money in them days. It just wasn't there, And like I was saying, we lived up on Main Street, and the farmers would come in, and someone carrying a little can of cream and a few dozen eggs, and stuff like that. They'd sell that, and that's what they'd use to go to the grocery store with when they'd go buy their groceries. And the folks run that for quite a few years. And then I and some kids, we set up a deal between a couple of buildings. We'd stack up oil cans. These two buildings were probably about 6 foot apart, and we'd go way down, probably 35, 40 feet down, and we'd stack those oil cans, and then we had baseballs, and we'd charge people a penny to throw a ball. If they knocked all the cans down, they got their penny back.
Mm-hmm.
If they didn't, we got the penny, you know. And we really had a big business going there, but noise, you know, that clattering and banging, and people didn't care. They, you know, today they'd be right on your neck for making so much racket and noise. And we did have, for a while, we had free movies in town. They had an outdoor screen there, and between two of the buildings, and they did have free movies for a while. I don't know why that came in. I guess our theater must have been closed in at that time for a while. But
What sort of sports and activities were you involved in at school?
well, I played baseball and football. But it was just grade school football. I really loved football, and I was really anxious to get into high school so I could go out for high school football. And they decided to quit the game here in town, and they had all good equipment too, and they sold all their football equipment, suits and stuff, and that was it. So I really felt cheated on that, because I really did like the game. And played basketball.
You said you were in band and any other organizations or?
No, that was about it.
What sort of food did you really hate as a kid?
Food did I hate?
Yep. What would you just not eat?
Oh, golly. I can't really think of anything that I really didn't like.
Really?
I guess one thing that I really liked for a long time until I found out what was in it, and boy, then that did it, was my grandparents and that used to do their own butchering, and then they made liverwurst. And went good with pancakes in the morning. And I had never thought just what it was made of. And one day I happened to hear them kind of talking about the recipe of cow's tongue and all this and that in there, and I thought, that's in there. And boy, that just soured me on that for a long time. But I did get over it. I got to where I liked it again. But for a long time, I couldn't hardly eat that stuff. But
when you were growing up, was it that whatever was set in front of you, you ate and you ate it all? Is that how you were raised?
pretty much so.
Yeah.
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 I know my first experience with horseradish, an uncle of mine, we was out the farm there with him for dinner one day, and he just was going to, be more or less play a joke on me about it, and he said, boy, here, you got to try this stuff. And he gave me a great big forkful. And boy, I ate that, and I tell you, my eyes watered and run, and I couldn't really get my breath. And that was my first experience with horseradish, and it was stout. I mean, it was mean. Yeah. But, we didn't have, when I lived on the farm there, no electricity or anything. And in the evenings, they'd light lamps, on the table. And at shore time, we had kerosene lanterns we'd take out. And, boy, oh boy, what a change of life.
I always wonder how you could have anything that would spoil, cheese, milk, all that needs to be refrigerated.
a lot of stuff, a lot of times they did the butchering in the fall. They could keep a lot of meat cold enough and, you know, hanging out in the porches and stuff. And I can remember them, they had what they called a summer kitchen. It was a little kitchen that was cooler in the summer because it had more screens on through it, you know, and that would get all hanging full of well, they dried their own beef, you know, and liverwurst, summer sausage, and all that stuff they made themselves. But otherwise, a lot of the other stuff that we had to keep cool through the summer, we had to lower that down.